The scanner hummed for the ninth time, and Lieutenant Bryn clicked his mandibles in frustration. In 400 years of Galactic Coalition service, every species that had ever stepped into a threat assessment pod had received a classification. Every single one. Until today. Dara Okonkwo stood inside the scanning chamber with her arms crossed, looking more bored than concerned. She was average height for a human, with dark skin and short-cropped hair. Her coalition medical uniform fit poorly, clearly designed for species with different proportions. "Is it supposed to take this long?" she asked. Bryn's compound eyes flickered across his display. The readings made no sense. The scanner kept cycling between threat levels, unable to settle on a single classification. One moment it registered her as minimal threat, the next as severe, then moderate, then back to minimal. "There seems to be a malfunction," Bryn said, though he did not believe his own words. Fleet Commander Rilvash stood nearby, his forearms folded in a pattern that indicated mild impatience. The tall Mathrani officer had commanded the Steady Horizon for 30 years. He had seen many things. A broken scanner was not worth his attention. "Assign her to medical and move on," Rilvash ordered. "She is here for cultural exchange, not combat duty." "Sir, the scanner has never failed to classify a subject. The result is showing as unknown." Rilvash turned one pair of eyes toward the display while keeping the other pair on Dara. The screen showed exactly what Bryn had described. Threat level, unknown. Classification error. Recommend manual assessment. "Then assess her manually," the commander said. "She is a medic. She heals wounded. Classification, support. Problem solved." Dara stepped out of the scanner pod and stretched her shoulders. "For what it is worth, I have never been very threatening. I mostly bandage cuts and tell people to drink more water." Weapons Officer Goss let out a rumbling laugh. The massive reptilian Dorvani had been watching the whole process with amusement. "The machine does not know what to make of you, small one. Perhaps you are too soft to register." "Probably," Dara agreed with a smile. "Humans are famously squishy." Bryn saved the scan results to his personal files. Something about this bothered him in ways he could not explain. The threat assessment system was not sophisticated. It measured physical capability, reflexes, aggression markers, and combat potential. It was simple math applied to biology. There was no reason it should fail. Unless the math did not apply to, he watched Dara collect her bag and follow a crew member toward the medical bay. She moved casually, without any visible tension. Her heart rate, according to residual scanner data, was remarkably slow for a mammalian species. "Almost too slow, Lieutenant," Rilvash said, pulling Bryn from his thoughts. "Do you have concerns about our new crew member?" Bryn hesitated. "No, Commander. I'm simply curious about the error. Curiosity is acceptable. Paranoia is not. She is one human on a ship of 400. Whatever the scanner thinks she might be, she is outnumbered." This was logical. Bryn accepted the reasoning and returned to his station. But that evening, alone in his quarters, he began researching the human homeworld. What he found did not comfort him. Earth was a death world by coalition standards. Extreme temperature variations, tectonic instability, predators in every environment, toxic plants, venomous creatures. Humans had evolved in conditions that would kill most galactic species within days. And yet they called themselves average. Unremarkable. Squishy. Bryn made a note in his personal log. First entry regarding human crew member Dara Okonkwo. Scanner malfunction remains unexplained. Recommend continued observation. No immediate concerns. He paused, then added one more line. "However, I find myself uncertain what we have brought aboard. Point 3 decks below." Dara unpacked her belongings in a small cabin near the medical bay. She had not brought much. Some clothes, some personal items, a few books on alien physiology. At the bottom of her bag, wrapped in cloth, was a worn combat knife her grandfather had carried through 2 wars. She had not listed it on her intake form. It was not technically against regulations. She just had not felt like explaining. Dara held the knife for a moment, feeling its familiar weight, then tucked it into her bedside storage. She probably would not need it. The Steady Horizon was a patrol vessel, not a warship. The mission was routine. The crew seemed friendly enough. She lay down on her bunk and stared at the ceiling. The hum of the ship's engines was different from anything she had known on Earth. Deeper, more constant. It would take time to get used to. Her communicator chimed with a welcome message from Commander Rilvosh. Standard greeting. Standard expectations. Standard protocols. At the bottom was a note from Lieutenant Bryn. Please report to the medical bay at 0600 tomorrow for orientation. Your scanner results have been logged as pending review. Dara smiled at that. Pending review. The polite way of saying nobody knew what to do with her. That was fine. Humans were used to being underestimated. It was one of their few advantages in a galaxy full of stronger, faster, more advanced species. Nobody expected much from the soft pink creatures from the Death World. Dara closed her eyes and let the engine hum carry her towards sleep. She had a feeling this assignment would be more interesting than anyone expected. 3 weeks passed without incident, and Dara began to think the scanner malfunction had been forgotten. She was wrong. The medical bay of the Steady Horizon was small but well-equipped. Dara spent her days learning alien anatomy, memorizing which species had copper-based blood and which had silicon-based organs. The work was fascinating. The crew was polite. Everything seemed normal, but she noticed the looks. Crew members glanced at her when they thought she was not watching. They stepped aside in corridors with more space than necessary. They asked questions about Earth with a careful tone, like they were gathering intelligence rather than making conversation. Goss was the exception. The big Dorvani had taken a liking to her and visited the medical bay often, usually with minor complaints that did not require treatment. Tell me more about your oceans, he said one afternoon, sitting on an examination table that groaned under his weight. What do you want to know? You swim in them. For recreation. Sometimes, yes. Goss shook his massive head. Your oceans contain creatures that can kill you. Predators with rows of teeth. Poisonous jellies. Crushing pressure at depth. And you enter them willingly. The beaches are nice, Dara said with a shrug. Your species is insane. We prefer the term adventurous. Goss laughed, a deep rumbling sound that vibrated through the deck. He had decided that humans were entertaining, if baffling. This was progress. Elsewhere on the ship, Lieutenant Bryn was not entertained. He was concerned. His observation of Dara had continued quietly over the past weeks. He tracked her biometric data through the ship's passive sensors, comparing her readings to baseline human norms. What he found was troubling. Her resting heart rate was at the extreme low end of human ranges. Athletes on Earth showed similar patterns, but Dara was a medic, not a professional competitor. Her reaction times, measured during routine activities, were faster than expected. During a small accident last week, when a storage container fell from a high shelf, she had caught it before anyone else in the room had registered the movement. Most disturbing was what happened during her exercise periods. Humans apparently maintained their physical condition through deliberate exertion. Dara ran on the ship's treadmill for extended periods, and her vitals during these sessions were alarming. Her heart rate would spike to levels that would indicate cardiac distress in most species, then return to baseline within minutes of stopping. The human body, Bryn was learning, was a machine built for extremes. He submitted a quiet request to Coalition Archives for human military records. What came back filled 3 data tablets with small text. Humans had been fighting each other for their entire recorded history. They had developed weapons, tactics, and training methods with the same dedication other species applied to art or science. The term that appeared most often was adaptability. Humans could function in almost any environment, eat almost any organic matter, and recover from injuries that would kill other species. They were not the strongest or fastest beings in the galaxy. They were simply the most difficult to stop. Bryn closed his research files and stared at the wall of his quarters. The scanner had not malfunctioned. It had simply encountered something it could not categorize. A species whose threat level depended entirely on circumstances that a message arrived from Commander Rilvosh. All senior staff to the bridge. Intelligence report incoming. Bryn made his way through the corridors, passing Dara as she exited the medical bay. She nodded politely. He nodded back. Neither spoke. On the bridge, Rilvosh displayed a tactical map. 3 red markers blinked in a system 2 jumps away. Vakari Raiders, the commander announced. A small fleet moving toward contested space. Current projections suggest they will reach our patrol zone within 6 days. The mood on the bridge shifted. The Vakari were known throughout the coalition. They did not negotiate. They did not take prisoners. Their boarding actions were legendary for their brutality. Should we request reinforcement? Goss asked from his weapons station. Requested and denied. The nearest fleet is 12 days out. We are to maintain patrol and avoid engagement if possible. If possible. The words hung in the air. Everyone knew what they meant. If the Vakari wanted a fight, there would be no avoiding it. After the briefing, Dara found Goss in the corridor. What happens during a Vakari boarding? The Dorvani looked down at her, his expression grim. They kill everyone. No exceptions. Their culture considers capture dishonorable for both parties. If they breach your ship, you fight until you win or you die. Dara absorbed this information with the same calm she showed when learning new medical procedures. Good to know, she said. That evening, alone in her cabin, she unwrapped her grandfather's knife and checked its edge. Still sharp, still ready. She had hoped this assignment would be peaceful. But hope was not a strategy, and Dara had learned long ago that peace was something you enjoyed between the moments when you had to fight for it. She slid the knife in her belt and went to sleep. 6 days was not very long. The Vakari came 2 days early. Dara was reorganizing medical supplies when the first impact shook the ship. The lights flickered. Alarms screamed through every corridor. A voice on the intercom announced what everyone already knew. Boarding pods detected. All crew to combat stations. This is not a drill. She grabbed her medical kit with one hand and her knife with the other. The blade felt natural in her grip, like it had always belonged there. She moved toward the door, then paused as a second impact tore through the deck above her. The Vakari were not wasting time. Dara ran through corridors filled with panicking crew members. Some were heading to defensive positions. Others were simply running. She pushed past them, following the sound of screaming toward the wounded. The ship's combat AI tracked her movement through internal sensors. Her icon on the tactical display flickered between designations. Non combatant. Unknown asset. Medical personnel. The system could not decide what she was. She rounded a corner and stopped. 2 Vakari scouts stood 15 meters ahead, their armored bodies blocking the corridor. They were tall, nearly 3 meters, with elongated limbs that ended in serrated bone blades. Their eyes, black and multifaceted, fixed on her immediately. The larger one made a sound that might have been laughter. A medical officer. Soft target. Easy kill. It lunged. Dara dropped. The bone blade whistled over her head as she rolled forward, coming up inside the creature's guard. Her knife found a gap between its neck plates before it could adjust. Dark blood sprayed across the wall. The Vakari collapsed, choking on its own fluids. The second one hesitated. Just a moment. Just long enough. Dara's hand found a surgical tool on her belt, a small laser cutter meant for emergency amputations. She threw it without thinking, guided by instincts older than civilization. The tool buried itself in the Vakari's eye. Clustered. It screamed and stumbled. She closed the distance and finished it with her knife. Silence. Then the hum of the ship's systems reasserting themselves. Dara stood over the bodies, breathing hard but controlled. Her heart pounded, but her hands were steady. This was familiar. This was what her body had been built for. Even if she spent most of her life pretending otherwise, a wall panel nearby displayed the ship's threat assessment for this sector. She glanced at it and almost laughed. Human crew member. Status. Unknown. Threat response. Recalculating. Seriously, she said aloud. Who let the scanner panic? I am a medic. She wiped her knife on the dead Vakari's armor and kept moving. The sounds of battle echoed from every direction. Energy weapons discharged. Aliens shouted in languages she could not understand. Somewhere, metal tore and atmosphere vented. The ship was dying around her. She found wounded in the next junction. A young Chilari with a damaged leg. A Mathrani clutching a wound in its side. 2 Dorvani soldiers, one unconscious, one barely holding a defensive position against the corridor beyond. Dara went to work. She stabilized the Chilari first, applying a tourniquet from her kit. The Mithrani was worse, internal bleeding from the look of it. She injected emergency coagulants and hoped they would work on alien biology. "Can you move?" she asked the conscious Dorvani. "Barely. There are more coming." "How many?" "I counted 6 before they pushed us back. 6 for Kari. 1 functional soldier. 4 wounded. And her." Dara looked at the corridor, then back at her patients. The math was simple. If she stayed here, they would all die. If she went out there, at least some of them might survive. She handed her medical kit to the Dorvani. "Keep them alive. I will be back." "Where are you going?" "To introduce myself to our guests." She did not wait for a response. She moved into the corridor, knife ready, every sense alert. The lights had failed in this section, leaving only emergency strips to guide her way. The first Verkari she encountered was alone, separated from its group. It never saw her coming. She took it from behind, quick and silent. The second pair was harder. They spotted her, raised weapons, began to fire. She dodged the first shot by reading the shooter's body language, moving before the trigger pulled. The second shot grazed her arm. She barely felt it, close quarters. Her territory now. She killed them both in the span of 4 heartbeats. Somewhere in the ship's computer core, her threat assessment updated again. The display now showed a simple message that would have been funny if it was not so desperate. "Warning. Human asset status critical. Combat effectiveness unknown. Recommend immediate support." But there was no support coming. There was only Dara, covered in alien blood, moving through the broken ship like something out of a nightmare. She found the remaining 3 Verkari regrouping near an access hatch. They saw her approach. They saw what she had done to their comrades. For the first time in the battle, the Verkari hesitated. Dara did not. Goss was bleeding out when Dara found him. The big Dorvani lay against a bulkhead, one hand pressed to a wound in his chest. His scales, usually a deep green, had faded to gray. Around him, 3 dead Verkari proved he had not gone down easily. Dara dropped to her knees beside him. "Stay with me. Human." His voice was weak. "You are covered in blood." "Not mine. Mostly." She opened her kit and went to work. The wound was deep, but Dorvani had redundant organs. If she could stop the bleeding, he might survive. That a sound from the corridor made her look up. More Verkari, drawn by the noise of her approach. 2 of them, weapons raised. She did not have time for this. Dara grabbed a metal panel from the floor, debris from an earlier explosion, and threw it at the lead Verkari. It was not meant to kill. It was meant to distract. The Verkari deflected the panel. In that moment, Dara was already moving. She hit the first one low, driving her knife into the joint where its leg met its body. It collapsed. She rolled over its falling form and came up facing the second. This one was faster than the others. A Verkari heavy, built for close combat. Its bone blades whistled through the air in a pattern designed to cut her in half. Dara dodged. Not backward, not sideways, but forward and down, sliding under the strike like water flowing around stone. Her grandfather had taught her that. When you cannot match strength, use speed. When you cannot match speed, use timing. She came up behind the heavy and opened its spine before it could turn that a console on the wall flickered with damage reports. Among them, her threat assessment blinked rapidly, the numbers climbing. "Now you are worried," she muttered. "Helpful." Goss watched her return to his side, his eyes wide. "What are you?" "Busy. Hold still." She finished stabilizing his wound, then helped him to his feet. He could walk barely. "That would have to be enough." "There is a defensible position 2 sections forward," she said. "We gather the wounded and hold until help comes. You cannot fight through more of them. You are injured." Dara looked down at herself. He was right. A gash across her arm from an earlier shot. Bruising along her ribs from impacts she could not remember taking. Blood seeping from a cut on her forehead. She had not noticed any of it. "I will manage," she said. "Move." They moved. Along the way, they collected survivors. A limping Mithrani engineer. 2 Chilari who had barricaded themselves in a storage room. A young Dorvani soldier named Pell who was terrified but still holding his weapon. Dara led them through maintenance corridors, avoiding the main passages where Verkari patrols hunted. She moved differently now, not like a medic, like something else entirely. Lieutenant Bryn watched from the bridge, tracking her progress through internal sensors. Her vitals were impossible. Heart rate elevated but controlled. Pain indicators showing injuries she should not be able to ignore. Stress hormones present but regulated, channeled into something useful that he found a human term in his research files. Combat flow state, a condition where human physiology optimized for survival, suppressing pain and fear while enhancing reaction speed and aggression. The Verkari had no equivalent. No species in Coalition records had an equivalent. Humans had evolved on a world where anything could kill them at any moment. Their bodies had learned to flip a switch when death approached, to become something other than what they normally were. The scanner was not malfunctioning. It had simply found a species that could change its threat level at will. On Deck 7, Dara's group reached a junction blocked by 4 Verkari. No way around. No way back. Stay behind me, she ordered. You cannot take 4 of them, Pell said. Watch me. She did not charge. She walked forward, knife in one hand, a broken pipe in the other. Her pace was steady. Her breathing was calm. The Verkari saw a small, wounded mammal approaching them with primitive weapons. They should have been amused. They were not. Something in her walk, in her eyes, told them this was not prey. This was something else. Something their instincts screamed at them to avoid. The first one attacked anyway. Pride demanded it. Dara caught its blade on the pipe, redirected the force, and drove her knife through its throat in a single motion. The others hesitated. She did not give them time to recover. 30 seconds later, she stood alone among 4 bodies. The survivors stared at her. Goss, Pell, the others. They had heard stories about Deathworlders. Humans specifically. They had dismissed most of them as exaggeration. And O1 was dismissing anything now. Dara wiped blood from her face and looked at her team. 2 more sections. Keep moving. They kept moving. Somewhere behind them, the Verkari Command Network updated their tactical assessment. Priority target identified. Human female, medical designation. Approach with overwhelming force only. But overwhelming force was getting harder to find. And the human kept moving forward. Commander Rilvash had consolidated what remained of the crew at the auxiliary bridge. The main bridge was gone, vented to space along with 15 good officers. Half the ship was either destroyed or overrun. When Dara walked through the door carrying a wounded Chilari over her shoulder, the room went silent. She was covered in blood. Most of it was not hers. Her medical uniform was torn in several places. A makeshift bandage wrapped her left arm. She moved with a slight limp that she seemed to be ignoring through pure stubbornness. Behind her came Goss, Pell, and the other survivors she had gathered along the way. Medical team, she said, lowering the Chilari to the floor. This one needs surgery. The rest needs stabilization. Medics rushed forward. Dara straightened and looked at Commander Rilvash. Situation report. Rilvash stared at her for a long moment. He had commanded ships for 3 decades. He had seen warriors from a dozen species. He had never seen anything like what stood before him now. Engineering is lost, he said finally. Without it, we cannot restore main power or weapons. Reinforcements are still 8 hours out, so we take engineering back. The Verkari have fortified it. We do not have the numbers for a direct assault. Dara nodded slowly, her mind working. Then we do not assault directly. How many combat-capable crew do you have? 30. Perhaps 35 if we include the walking wounded. I need 2. The right 2. Rilvash's secondary eyes blinked in confusion. You propose to retake engineering with 3 soldiers? I propose to retake engineering with 1 soldier and 2 people who can follow orders. The rest hold here and protect the wounded. It was insane. It was impossible. But Rilvash had watched her progress through the ship on internal sensors. He had seen her kill Verkari at a rate that defied explanation. The scanner still could not classify her. Every time it tried, the readings came back more extreme. He had one question. Why? You are a medic. This is not your duty. Dara met his eyes. All four of them. Those are my patients in the corridors. My wounded crew. My ship now. As much as anyone's. I do not leave people behind. Silence. Then Goss stepped forward. I will go with her. You can barely walk, Dara said. I can shoot. That is enough. Pell moved forward as well, the young Dorvani soldier who had been terrified hours ago. He was still scared, but he was also something else now. I will go. Dara looked at them both, then nodded. Maintenance shafts. Service corridors. We move quiet until we cannot. She spent 5 minutes explaining human small unit tactics. Cover angles. Fields of fire. Communication signals. How to breathe during combat to maintain control. The aliens listened like students before master. Then they moved. The journey to engineering was a nightmare of narrow passages and close encounters. Twice they ran into Verkari patrols. Twice Dara dealt with them before Goss or Pell could raise their weapons. How do you know where they will be? Pell whispered after the second ambush. Patterns, Dara said simply. They move like hunters. I grew up learning how hunters think. Pell did not ask what kind of hunters. He suspected he did not want to know. They reached engineering through an access vent above the main control room. Dara looked down through the grating at 6 Verkari and their equipment. I go first. Give me 10 seconds. Then shoot anything that moves. 10 seconds is not enough time. It will be. She dropped through the grating before they could argue. 10 seconds later, Goss and Pell dropped into a room of chaos. 2 Verkari were already dead. A third was clutching a wound. Dara was fighting the fourth hand-to-hand while the remaining 2 tried to get clear shots. Goss opened fire. Pell followed. The room became thunder and light and screaming. Then silence. Dara stood among the bodies, breathing hard. Her knife was buried in the chest of the last Verkari. She pulled it free and turned to the engineering console. Give me a moment. Her hands moved across the controls. Human interfaces were simpler, but she had learned the coalition systems during her weeks aboard. Power began returning to the ship. Weapons came online that a screen nearby displayed her updated threat assessment. She glanced at it and snorted. Threat level. Severe. Classification. Apex. Note. Protective response active. Took you long enough, she muttered on the bridge. Commander Rilvash watched his ship come back to life. External sensors showed the Verkari raiders beginning to pull away. Coalition reinforcement signals had appeared on long-range scanners. The battle was turning. A message arrived from engineering. Dara's voice, tired but steady. Engineering secured. We're bringing systems back now. Recommend you start shooting. Rilvash permitted himself a small smile. All batteries, fire at will. The steady horizon, wounded but alive, began to fight back. And in the heart of the ship, a human medic finally allowed herself to sit down. The steady horizon limped into Coalition Station 14, 3 days after the battle. Rescue ships had arrived in time to chase off the remaining Verkari. Repair crews now swarmed over the wounded vessel like insects tending to a hive. Dara sat on a medical bed in the station's hospital wing, watching a Mithrani doctor examine her injuries with barely concealed disbelief. 2 broken ribs, the doctor said, reading from a scanner. Deep laceration to the left arm, requiring 40 stitches. Moderate blood loss. Mild concussion. Extensive bruising across 70% of your body. Sound about right. You functioned through all of this during the battle. I was busy. The doctor made a note in her file. The note would eventually reach Coalition Medical Archives, where it would join a growing collection of reports about human durability. None of them would be believed by species who had not witnessed it directly. Commander Rilvash arrived an hour later. He looked tired. The past 3 days had been filled with reports, debriefs, and the grim work of counting the dead. The steady horizon had lost 40% of its crew, but 60% had survived. Against a Verkari boarding action, this was nearly unprecedented. May I sit? He asked. Dara gestured to a chair beside her bed. The commander folded himself into it. His 4 arms arranging themselves in a pattern she had learned indicated thoughtfulness. I have read the internal sensor logs, he said. I have watched recordings of your actions. I have compared them to coalition records of human combat performance. And You are remarkable, even by your species standards. Dara shook her head. I am not. I am just a medic who had a bad day. You killed 23 Verkari. Personally, I stopped counting after the first few. Rilvash was silent for a moment. When you arrived on my ship, I dismissed you. I thought the scanner malfunction was irrelevant. I believed you were simply a medical officer here to learn our methods and teach us yours. I was. You still are. But you are also something else. He leaned forward slightly. I spoke with Lieutenant Bryn. He explained his theory about your threat classification. He believes the scanner was not malfunctioning. He believes humans simply cannot be classified because your threat level changes based on circumstances. Dara considered this. That sounds about right. On a normal day, I'm not dangerous. I heal people. I tell jokes. I worry about whether I am eating enough vegetables. And on an abnormal day, I become whatever I need to become to protect the people around me. Most humans are the same. We do not think about it. It just happens. Rilvash processed this information. It aligned with everything he had learned about humans in the past 3 days. They were not natural warriors like the Dorvani. They were not tactical geniuses like the Mithrani. They were something stranger, something that could change based on need. The Coalition has created a new position, he said, based in part on observations of your performance. We are calling it Adaptive Response Specialist. What does it mean? It means someone who can become whatever the situation requires. Medic in peacetime. Fichte in Va. Leader when leadership is needed. He paused. We would like you to be the first. Dara laughed. It was not a mocking laugh. It was the laugh of someone who found the universe genuinely strange and amusing. You want to hire me to be unpredictable. We want to hire you to be human. In all the ways that implies. She thought about it. Her original assignment had been for 6 months. Cultural exchange. Learn some medicine, teach some medicine, go home. Simple. Nothing about this was simple anymore. I will need a bigger medical kit, she said finally. And formal permission to carry my knife. Rilvash smiled. It was an unusual expression on a Mithrani face, but she had learned to read it. That could be arranged. Later that evening, Dara found Goss on an observation deck. The big Dorvani was staring at the stars, his wounds bandaged but healing. They offered me a promotion, he said without turning around. Did you take it? I told them I would think about it. Truth is, I'm not sure I want to lead anyone. I watched you do it. I'm not built for that. Dara stood beside him, looking out at the same stars. Neither was I. Then things got bad and I did not have a choice. That is what frightens me about your species. Goss turned to face her. You become what you need to be. You do not ask permission. You do not hesitate. You just change. Is that bad? I do not know. It is certainly terrifying to watch. Dara smiled. You get used to it. Do you? No, not really. They stood together in comfortable silence. Through the station's hall, Dara could hear the distant sounds of repairs continuing on the steady horizon. Her ship now in some ways. Her crew. Her responsibility. Somewhere in Coalition databases, a single record updated. Species, human. Threat level, variable. Recommended response, cooperation. Below that, a new note had been added. These creatures are not special. They're simply from a world that never let them be anything else. Treat them with respect. They have earned it. Dara pulled out her communicator and opened the message Rilvash had sent earlier. At the bottom was the official offer. Adaptive Response Specialist. First of her kind. She accepted it with a single tap. The stars continued burning, indifferent to the small human who had changed everything simply by refusing to die. That was humanity in a nutshell. Really. Too stubborn to know when to quit. The galaxy was beginning to understand.